and you spoke to us about it, that you have, by additional service frequency, been able to get 4% increase in ridership and transit. Now, we see ridership going down in transit in other cities. Just by having more frequent service, you got an increase in transit? Is that the problem?
I think it's one of the problems. It's actually focusing on where mass transit has the highest and best use, the highest productivity. In our realignment that we're doing, incorporating rapid transit as well as our regular bus network, people want reliable, dedicated, and frequent service. And we're finding increasing that frequency and expansion of hours of service where people can rely on that is increasing ridership.
So it's not just the trains should run on time, there should be more frequent trains, and then they'll get off the road and get on the train.
Yes, ma'am, that's the way we feel.
Well, this is very important information. Ms. McMillan, I'm interested in your testimony that speaks about expanding the share of funds which go to what you call the nation's metropolitan areas. So who would control these funds? How would that work? Would there be conflicts among the parts of the region?
Well, certainly I can speak in the Bay Area where the funds do come to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission as the MPO, but we work extremely closely with a bottoms-up approach with our cities and counties to determine how those funds would then be distributed if we're talking about SDP and
Who controls that? Who do you talk to if you're working on an area-wide basis? Perfectly understandable because of the way people cross county lines just to get to work or to shop, but who is in charge of deciding where the funds go?
The Metropolitan Transportation Commission within our region as the MPO would ultimately be the one that would make this. But I would stress that on our board is represented the local entities of the counties and cities. And so getting their input about what the needs are and then working with us to determine how to distribute those funds to the relative needs in the different areas of this county is very important. So I think that cooperation among us to determine how investments should be made, and particularly in those areas where a problem is not located in one city or another, but does cross boundaries, we need to recognize that the writing public often doesn't recognize those boundaries, and we need to come up with the solutions collectively to address their overall journey wherever that may start or end.
Yeah. Well, I'd really also like to ask Mr. Clark, and there may be others of you, Mr. Stanley, who could speak to this, very concerned about the lack of the difference in how people now look at the workforce for transportation. Mr. Clark spoke about registered apprenticeship. Now, young men whose fathers or grandfathers were in the industry, with, sitting at computers, they don't even have to be very skilled to do that. Don't we need to do more than look at registered apprenticeship, because they don't even get to the apprenticeship in the first place? How do we draw people to this very important industry to do the work that needs to be done? Both of you, I'd like to hear what you have to say on that.
I'll start. I think one of the things, several things that we need to do. One thing that we clearly need to do is talk differently about what the workforce looks like. I mean, it's quite often when we have discussions about the workforce, and I focus very much on the frontline workforce, and in rooms full of people, one of the things I often do is ask how many people here have a bachelor's degree or more, and usually in those discussions, almost all hands go up. Actually, only about a third of adults have a bachelor's degree. And if we keep communicating to young people that the only way you get ahead is by getting a four-year college education,